Hi everyone, my name is Heidi Rhodes. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Colesville, which is just outside of Silver Spring in District 14, and I'm a volunteer leader with Jews United for Justice. Along with the Baltimore Jewish Council and the JCRC of Howard County, JUFJ is excited to be co-hosting tonight's program on state-level redistricting in Maryland. JUFJ strives to be guided by the sacred values of Jewish tradition and by the history of our ancestors who sought justice. These values sustain us and provide us with ethical and spiritual direction. As a Jewish organization committed to achieving social, economic, and racial justice, when it comes time for an election, we are called not just to vote, but to vote our values. The Jewish sage Hillel taught us that we cannot separate ourselves from the community. And according to Rabbi Yitzhak, whose words are in the Babylonian Talmud, Berachot 55a, a ruler is not to be appointed unless the community is consulted. When we participate in local elections, we take responsibility for ensuring that our leaders represent our values and we strengthen our connection to the larger community. Tonight's program is designed to provide a background on the recently completed redistricting process and educate all of us on what this means for us as residents and voters moving forward, especially with the elections just around the corner. I now want to turn it over to Shauna Levy from the JCRC to introduce tonight's guest speaker.
Thank you for that. Good evening. I'm Shauna Levy. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement at the Jewish Federation of Howard County, and I work with the JCRC of Howard County. I have the privilege of introducing our speaker, Joanne Antoine. Joanne is the Executive Director of Common Cause Maryland. Common Cause Maryland is a nonpartisan grassroots organization dedicated to restoring the core values of American democracy, reinventing an open, honest, and accountable government that works in the public interest, and empowering ordinary people to make their voices heard. It was founded in 1974 and is one of the state's most effective watchdog groups and has been a strong force for reform at both state and local levels. Joanne joined the organization in 2017 and leads the organization's policy campaigns and builds its capacity. Joanne also worked for Democracy Initiative, where she helped engage local, state, and national organizations in the coalitions and campaigns in Maryland. She has also worked as an organizer, trainer, and strategist for numerous campaigns in the US and in Haiti. We're so pleased to be hearing from you tonight, Joanne.
Hopefully everyone could hear me, but hi everyone, good evening. I am excited to be here. Thank you so much to the JUFJ team for inviting me to participate in this evening's redistricting discussion. Obviously we value our partnership with the organization. You all have worked closely with us, not only on, advancing small donor public financing throughout the state, but just in this past year, right? We were able to build this robust transparency campaign around the legislature. And we wouldn't have been able to do that, honestly, without the leadership of Molly and the team. So we are grateful to you all and obviously look forward to continuing to collaborate over the next few years. I think we've already gotten an overview of Common Cause. I think in the simplest sense, because I feel like sometimes people get confused, who are we or what do we do? We're an organization that focuses largely on how our government functions. And, one of the core issues that we work on is redistricting, ensuring fair representation, obviously for the diverse state that we live in. Now this evening, I realized I should have given Matan all the links beforehand. So I will give them to him after in case folks want to look at resources. But, this evening, I really wanted to focus not on the politics of redistricting, because that would take us all night, but more on the process itself and, what has happened just over these past 2 years, following the 2020 census. And I think as an organization, we've been working for the past decade, long before I came to Common Cause, to kind of rid Maryland of this reputation of having the worst gerrymander in the country, right? It's kind of always a back and forth between us and North Carolina, depending on who you talk to. And in recent years, we've championed reforms that would have established a truly independent, nonpartisan commission that was powered by the people of Maryland, and established by the legislature. And unfortunately, those reforms went nowhere. We've also worked to put congressional standards in place, similar to the standards that we have in place for drawing our legislative maps. We've managed to get Democrats to sponsor those bills and so forth. And again, all of those bills died, in committee. They kind of go to rules committee to die. So, I share all of that because going into, this redistricting cycle, we knew that there was very little that we were going to be able to do to truly influence the process. Outside of taking legal recourse through the courts, if only really, really necessary. And I think it's also important to remember that in the backdrop of all of this, right next door on the Hill, we had Sarbanes and others championing the For the People Act, which later became the Freedom to Vote Act, which could have helped us, improve our redistricting process. But obviously the Senate, continued to hold those processes up. So before I kind of go into this cycle, I want you all, especially if you've lived in Maryland, just think about 2010 or the 2010 redistricting cycle, whether or not you even knew that we were redrawing the boundaries of our maps, whether you had access to tools like District R and interactive maps where you can, go online and move over and see where you're at, whether or not you even knew who drew those maps that have been put in place. I think most average Marylanders did not, right? And it's largely because the redistricting process is this secretive process that happens behind closed doors. And, I think going in this session, I'll be honest, redistricting is one of those issues where I was praying all throughout it because I was just like, oh my God, I have to tackle this. And, I decided that our goals, and a lot of our partners did the same, was that we were going to focus largely on shining a light on the redistricting process itself so that Marylanders, if they wanted to, would be able to engage. And obviously outside of that, ensuring compliance with the Voting Rights Act and protecting communities of interest. And, I think even beyond that, remembering that because we had 2020 census delays, ensuring that map makers were actually using accurate data that reflects, that shows the growth that we've seen in Howard County, Frederick County, Charles County, and even beyond that, that takes into account that Maryland is now the fourth most diverse state in the country. Now, I think and I know I've got limited time, so I'm trying not to, but thinking about the redistricting process, it's important that we remember that it was a unique year, right? We literally had an election right around the corner. So that meant that maps needed to be drawn, adopted, challenged, because we knew that every single map, even at the local level, would likely see numerous legal challenges, and then adopted again in time for the local boards to be able to, finalize our precincts and then ensure that voters get the correct data. That's a lot. In addition to that, we knew that this impacted candidates. We had many people, filing to run for office who didn't know what district they would actually live in. And then in the backdrop of all of this, the governor decided, I think lots of people thought we knew this was coming, but the governor decided to create a commission of his own. Now, as an organization, this is the one place where obviously we're nonpartisan, but we don't get to work with Republicans much outside of redistricting, right? And, Governor Hogan has been our national champion. So when he decided to create this Citizens Redistricting Commission, modeling the reform that we had been championing statewide, we knew that the commission, even if transparent, really had no had no power over this process, right? At the end of the day, congressional lines are drawn by the legislature, right? And the governor obviously has veto authority there, and legislative lines are proposed by the governor, and the legislature can make changes. So very quickly, I know I'm using a lot of abbreviations, but I think when we look at the two commissions themselves, it's important that we look at the two models, right? The Citizens Commission that was established by the governor was made up of Maryland residents. The chairs themselves, they do have relationships with the governor, but the other 6 individuals, right? We had 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, 3 independents. And the 6 individuals serving on that commission, I talked to them all. Most of them had no idea what they were even getting into. And when we look at the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Commission, which was established by the legislature, it was made up of 6 members, all elected leaders, 4 Democrats, 4 of them being Democrats, 2 of them being Republican, right? So we know going in that, again, elected leaders, even if they're trying not to, they are always going to consider their own interests as they are drawing maps. And, while MCRC, or the Governor's Commission, was criticized a lot, I will say what they managed to do was function in a transparent way, which is what we would have liked to see the legislature do. They drew their maps on Zoom, right? It was all virtual. We got to see a demographer talk through all the different things that they were considering. We saw them deliberate, whether or not to move forward with multi-member or single member districts, for the legislature, which again is complicated. And, they listened to input and they at least landed on a hybrid. But I have to give the legislature credit too, in comparison to 2010, this was a more transparent process. They did go out of their way to at least tour the state. They did give us maps somewhat in advance. They were interactive where we can look and so forth. And while the legislative process, again, is just not that inclusive, so people had very minimal time to actually sign up to testify, it was better than in previous years. Now, I'm going to give, the JUFJ team a link where you can see more in detail kind of what happened, leading up to maps being adopted. But, very quickly, we had special session in December. We met in Annapolis maybe for a week. I think we were thinking maybe it might be 2. Special session was focused on the congressional maps. We knew that going in, the legislature could have gone and passed a map that went all blue, honestly, if they really wanted to. They didn't go that route, right? A map was adopted, and as expected, the governor vetoed that map. Now, when we went into regular session in January, the legislature overrode the veto and adopted the congressional map that they passed during special session, and they introduced the legislative map. Now, the congressional map was challenged as expected, right? We knew all of this was coming. And the highest court, actually an Anne Arundel judge, whose name I'm forgetting, who is considered a Democrat, challenged, rejected that map, right? They ordered the legislature to go back to the drawing board to draw a new map in 5 days and called it an extreme gerrymander. Now, again, thinking about the process, this happened on like a Thursday or a Friday. On Monday, we woke up on Twitter, a map popped up, right? So again, we had no idea. I mean, we can guess, but we didn't see who drew those maps. We just knew that a new map popped up. It popped up on a Monday, and that on Tuesday, there was going to be a hearing. So again, when we're thinking about the legislature and, the way that it works and so forth and maps, it's important that we remember that maps determine our political power, right? And I think, for even considering the political climate that we're in and whether or not we want our maps to go blue or red, it's important that Marylanders have an opportunity to actually assess the map itself, to give feedback in real time. And unfortunately, we were unable to do that. Now, the governor's maps, they went nowhere. We expected that. Common Cause, we took no position. While it was a transparent process, I will say, even when you look at the congressional maps, we knew that our partners wanted more representation for Baltimore City. You know, when we looked at the legislative maps, they did away with a lot of our multi-member districts, where we knew that in certain areas that has actually led to more representation in the legislature. So while well-intended, I think hybrid, as an organization, we will always support the multi-member, single member, combination that we have. But just thinking about those last few days of session, right? They drew this new map, it was adopted, and to our surprise, it wasn't that gerrymandered, right? So much so that folks, are concerned that one of the districts is more of a swing district. And I think when we look at the legislative map itself, again, which is a lot more complicated, we were concerned, right? That if these legal challenges, I think there were 4 really valid legal challenges to the legislative map, that if they were to move forward, our primary would be delayed yet again. And we knew that if we moved to an August and September date, that we would see turnout decline even more. It would impact candidates and so forth. So, while we have better maps, however we want to say it, I think as a state overall, I think this is where we need to ask ourselves, is it time that the legislature stop waiting on a national solution, right? And that we put the interest of Marylanders first? Is having districts that are blue enough, right? Or should we be considering whether or not, our maps truly represent the diversity in our state, right? Should we have more majority minority districts? Should we be working to protect incumbents who a lot of times may or may not, represent the interests of those actual residents that they represent? So, I'm not going to go into the politics of it all, but, it's important that we think about that, whether or not the maps that we have in place, even if largely blue, if they represent the needs of the people in Maryland. And I would say, as a call to action, because I always like to give one, right? Obviously, ballots are already hitting mailboxes if you requested one and so forth. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of voters who are confused. Again, most people didn't know that we were redrawing the boundaries of our map, and people are going to open their ballot and see that there's a candidate on there. You were expecting to see Kwesi Mfume, and you're seeing someone else, right? So it's important that in our communication to voters, that we are urging them to confirm their voting districts, which they're now able to do on the SBU website. I know that I've gone over time. So, there's a lot to cover in the redistricting process. I will just finish off by saying that it's very political, right? So bad that a lot of times, what we saw is that our partners who really wanted to engage, who had communities of interest that they wanted to protect, they could not engage in the process out of fear of retaliation, from the people who were drawing the maps themselves. So, I think it's necessary that we at least move forward with congressional standards, and that obviously we improve the process for local redistricting too. So I will pause there because I will keep going on and on, but yes.
Thank you for that. And I think that Sarah is going to jump on. Sarah, I'll turn it over to you to lead us through a Q&A session. I'm sure folks have lots of questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joanne, for your presentation. One of the questions was, are there other states that do have a better way to do this process? And if so, you want to talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, I think, we always, California really is our model state. I think California is just as diverse as Maryland, obviously a lot larger, but California really has this ideal model where they've created these independent redistricting commissions, not only at the state level, at the local level as well. So much so that the commissioners are paid. They fly out to other states and assist with our advocacy. They take it into consideration, all type of demographic background, not just location, but gender, race, age, and so forth, to ensure that it truly, that we have people at the table who truly, understand the different communities that are here. And, in that process, it's kind of, it'll take forever for me to explain, but it is more of a lottery process. And, there are public hearings where members of the public can kind of come in and flag issues and so forth. And, I know people question whether or not you can have a truly nonpartisan commission. Obviously people come in, with their own affiliations and so forth. But I think because their work is so transparent, they actually draw maps that reflect what feedback they receive from the public. And what happened this cycle is that they actually saw no legal challenges to their map, which is big. So they're the only state that had no challenges to their actual congressional map, proving that, again, their model works. It might not fully work for Maryland. I think we're always going to have to come up with our own version, but I think there's a lot we can learn from a state like California.
Thank you. And then a couple of basic questions are, what are the requirements that we have in Maryland when we do redistricting, the legal requirements? And then also after that, can you just define what a single member district is? There's just a few questions about that.
Yeah, maybe I'll go into the single versus multi first. So this is only regarding our legislative maps. Maryland is unique, and a lot of people do not understand our process, but if you're like me, I live in legislative district 20, right? I have a single senator. My senator right now is Senator Will Smith, but I have 3 delegates who represent me. And in certain parts of the state, depending on where you live, I'm trying to think of a good example. I know that Baltimore County has a few single member districts, or they've got those areas where it'll be like, 11A and 11B, right? That might be where you are in a district where, again, you have 1 senator, but you happen to have only 1 delegate. And if we look at the formula, for how the legislature determines when and where, gets a single versus multi, there actually isn't one, right? They've kind of, and, I don't want to say they do it just based off of feelings, right? They do not. I think in some areas, we can look at a place like Prince George's County, right? And while we don't really have single member districts there, we can argue that if there were a few more, we could probably put more representation in the legislature for Hispanic, Latinx community and so forth. But again, in the most basic terms, it is where you possibly live in a district where you've either got more representation in Annapolis or you have less. And in terms of requirements, I think it's easier if I give you all in the link that I'm going to give, Matan, it'll kind of give you in detail, because again, the requirements are different, for each map that you're drawing, right? Again, this is where the legislature has a number of very detailed information, everything from the, ensuring that there's equal representation in terms of population size, considerations for communities of interest and so forth. And for the legislature, it's a bit more lax. But obviously, all are required to comply with the Voting Rights Act, which again, in the most basic way, right, ensures that people of color, Black folks specifically, that we have an equal opportunity at representation, in local and state government. So that doesn't necessarily mean that when we say there's a majority minority district, that a person of color gets that district, right? But it means that we had ample opportunity, a fair way of electing someone who actually represents the majority interest in that place. But again, I think it's easier if you go through the document with all of the specific requirements for each map, keeping in mind that at the local level as well, it varies too. And I think even beyond that, thinking about a place like Prince George's County and Montgomery County, where they also have to comply with, I think it's section 203, language access and so forth, those considerations have to be taken into account as well.
Okay, there's a follow-up question to that. What does communities of interest mean?
Oh, this is where it gets, because I had a debate with someone with this the other day. I mean, this is where there's a group of people in an area who share similar values, or so I think sometimes people think of it as just, we've got this area, a Mormon, a large Mormon community over here, right? Yes, they're considered a community of interest, but maybe you've got an area that has a lot of young people, right? That can be a community of interest too. I'm Haitian American, and I know that on the Eastern Shore, somehow we've got a large populations of Haitians over there, right? That would be a community of interest. I'm trying to think of another unique example. I think it's California or maybe it's Ohio, because their maps keep getting thrown out. I think Ohio has a big area where there's a lot of like fishermen or something like that, right? That is a community of interest. So again, we can make the case for a lot of different communities of interest and in terms of what it is, but again, it's where people there share similar concerns, similar values, and where if you split them, again, you know, maybe you are in some way diluting their power, that the influence that they would have over decision makers regarding things that impact their own community. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have time for one or two more questions. One question was that, do you think any of the new maps have a specific area that underrepresents various groups? And if so, which?
I think it's always going to be the Prince George's County, Montgomery County area. I think that's the best example. You know, even when you look at our congressional map, the one that actually passed, you know, the version before kind of had a hook that went into Montgomery County, but between the two jurisdictions, you're actually splitting a really large, you know, Hispanic and Latinx community. When we look at Prince George's County, you know, the way that the maps are drawn, like, yes, we've got representation from a person of color, but again, I would argue that the legislative maps are not drawn in a way that allow for more diverse voices, you know, to be represented in those seats. We know that it's really impossible for certain communities in that area to run and actually win. So I think that would be the best example, probably the Baltimore County, no, Anne Arundel County area as well. Actually, Anne Arundel probably more.
Thank you. I think that is it for questions. Everyone, thank you so much, Joanne, for all of this information. We're now going to talk about some of the districts that we've seen a lot of changes in, and I also wanted to formally introduce myself. I'm Sarah Mirsky-Mickey. I'm the Deputy Director of the Baltimore Jewish Council. We represent the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore and all of its agencies. I oversee our government and community relations portfolio. So I basically looked at everyone who had RSVP'd. There are over, I think, 15 districts. So I can't go through every single district, but I think Matan will put up our slideshow and I will go through, I think, 4 different districts that have seen some significant changes. And if you guys do have questions about your district, if we're not going to talk about it, please just message me and hopefully by the end I'll be able to answer for you, or I'll touch base with you after this program. So kind of how, Shauna talked about with our redistricting, there's a couple of things that, are supposed to go into it. So when you look at, one of the main things is about population, and that's one of the things I'm going to focus on, especially around the Baltimore area. So when we look, there's a lot of changes to Baltimore City and Baltimore County, and a lot of that is because Baltimore City saw an almost 6% decrease in population from 2010 to 2020. And it's actually the lowest population in the city that has been since 1910. It's under 600,000. Whereas areas that we're going to talk about as well, like Howard County, have seen almost a 14% increase in 10 years. And Baltimore County about 2.7%, and the state as a whole has increased about 8%. So when people move from one area to the other, there's going to be less population, and our district should be about evenly split. So that's part of the reason for our changes. So for District 11, which is in Baltimore County, it's both a newly split district, meaning that it used to be just a single district 11, and we had 3 delegates and 1 senator. And the area is a little different, but almost the same. So Matan, if you go ahead, great. So this is the new map of District 11, 11A, and 11B. 11A is a single delegate district. There's 1 delegate, and 11B has 2 delegates who will represent it, and they have the same exact senator. So for 11A, this district is now a majority minority district. And there is currently, for this upcoming primary, there is actually 1 person running, and just a Democrat. There's no Republican running. So, unless there is a crazy write-in campaign, that person will be the Democratic nominee for the fall for 11A. Now for 11B, all of the current delegates that are currently serving in District 11 live in 11B, so 3 of them. You must live in your district in order to run in it. So those 3, and they're all 3 are Democrats, are running for 2 seats for the Democratic nomination, and there are also 2 Republicans running. So that is the big change with District 11. You can go back to the slide ahead, like the first slide. Thank you. So for District 12, it is that is Howard and now Anne Arundel County. And this is a newly split district. Again, it was originally just 12 and now there's an A and B, and it also encompasses a new area. So Tanya, you want to go to the old map of District 12. Thank you. So District 12 is the light blue that you see, and I apologize, all of these pictures and screenshots are really hard to see. There isn't a really great new map that's been put out yet that I can find from the state. So it's this light blue color. And you can see, or if you can read, it's mainly the Columbia area, and then a little bit Elk Ridge, and then for Baltimore, because it up until now it encompassed Baltimore County, it was kind of the Catonsville area. The new district, go to the next slide, is if you look at 12A, it's in green right in the middle, and 12B, which is the change, it's highlighted in a red border. 12B now is not Baltimore County, it is Anne Arundel County, kind of the Glen Burnie area. And it's also a politically different area than 12 was as a whole. So 12, the previous 12 as a full district, as a with 3 delegates, was majority Democrat. 12B has a larger Republican population. And the 2 of the members that are current members that are running in the primary, they both live in 12A. The other member, Delegate Ebersol, represents Baltimore County. And so he will actually be running in 44 because he no longer is in the current District 12. So it'll be all new people running in 12B. And the majority of those running for that 1 seat are Republicans, and whomever the Republican and Democratic nominee will face off. So that's also, you see population change. Anne Arundel County was up significantly at 8% as well. And go to back to the first page. All right, so District 42 is still a split district. So it's been a split district. We've had a 42A and a 42B, but the area is different, and that also actually affects District 43. So the old District 42, one second. As you can see on the map, the old District 42 was mainly northern Baltimore County, generally a more rural area, and District 42A was kind of the Towson, more suburban area. 42B has traditionally been represented by both Democrats and Republicans, as well as the District 42 as a whole, with having both recently Democratic and Republican senators. 42A has been more Democratic. So again, remember that Baltimore County increased significantly in population compared to Baltimore City, which is Towson. The 42A district kind of hits right below at that border of the city. And so now with District 43, in 1 second. There we go. Oh, no, can we go to 43, the old 43. So the old 43, we can see, is just Baltimore City. And it was a single member district. So 43 has now become a split district. And if we go to the new, there we go. And there's a 43A and B. So you can kind of see that 43B encompasses a lot of what 42 used to encompass. And 43A is still basically the kind of northern parts of Baltimore City. So District 43A has an open seat. So there are a lot of different people running because Delegate Maggie McIntosh has retired. And 43B is now someone running as Delegate Forbes, who used to represent 42. So she is shifted, and there is also a Republican running in 43B as well. Switching gears to another part of our state where there is a smaller change, but I saw based on the people with RSVP that it might impact them, is District 21. So District 21 is Prince George's County and part of Anne Arundel County. The area I'm going to focus on is the area that is hitting the yellow area that is not 23A, where it's at, where like the district word is. So that area is was District 33, which is kind of the greater suburbs of Annapolis to the more rural areas of Anne Arundel, like Crofton. So the new District 21, the main change is that it kind of pushes a little bit into where people who used to live in 33 were. So you might have a change there. So that's a really, really quick overview of some of the changes, and I'm happy to take any questions. And you can send them to me in the chat and I can answer them. And if not, I'll just take it that I was, so comprehensive that no one has any questions, and I'm also fine with that.
I've got a couple questions that I've received that maybe I can throw to you. One is about polling places, just general questions. I'm in a new district, my district has changed. Does this mean that I have a new polling place and I have to look that up, or can I just count on it being the same place it has been? And the other question we got was, it's just highlighting some more confusion about the single member versus multi-member districts in terms of how many folks you get to vote for. And just so if you can talk about what that means now, if someone is now in a single member district, or if now they're in a multi-member district, like how does that change how they should approach their voting and what they'll see on their ballot?
Sure. So the first about polling places can, sometimes you have the same polling place forever, but they can change. But I'm just going to put into the chat your voters. There should be in that, if you click that link, I think I put the right link in. That should have your voting place. You also should have received in the mail, or will be receiving in the mail in the next couple of days, potentially information from your polling place, or if you wanted to vote early, your early voting ballot should also be coming out pretty soon. If that's not the right link, Shoshana, if you could put the right link in, I think that is the right one though. So also about single member districts and voting. So you can only vote for one person once, no matter what. So if you're in a district that has 2 delegates, like a split district, and then one that has, then the other side of the district has 1, you can't vote for the same person twice, but you will get to vote for 2 people on whether you're Democrat or a Republican on your party's side. So I don't know if that clears that question up. And then in the general election, same thing. You can vote, whatever party or alternate party is on the ballot, or write in that you want to put in, but it's just, you'll have 2 if you're in a 2-person district, 1 if you're in a 1-person district, and then if you're in a old-fashioned non-split district, 3 people. And someone asked about the recording. Oh yeah, we answered that. So yeah, the recording will be in a follow-up, and also eventually on the JUFJ's YouTube page, which you can find from their website. Yeah. It's just District 41 is, I am 95% sure 100% the same, but I haven't looked if there's any little differences. So don't quote me on that.
I'm also getting a question. Just sort of about how legislators work together. Let's see if I can understand. Oh yeah, so for a district, let's say, I live in District 43. Up until now, all of my senator and my 3 delegates have all been in the same district. Now that's going to be split, right? I'll have two delegates representing me in the senator, and then there'll be the other delegate in the northern part of the district, in the other district. So how does that affect them working together as a District 43 group, or does it not really affect it?
Sure. So yes, everyone will still work together, but you have a split district because the people you represent are most likely different in some way, whether it's racially, socioeconomically, or different. The fact that county issues may be different than city issues, or northern county issues might be different than southern county issues, and the types of jobs that are there, and the education level, lots of different things. But the senators do have the harder time of working and trying to represent all the diversity within their larger district.
So I'm seeing one other question
yeah.
that's sort of along the same lines. I think it's a follow-up. So for like the Baltimore City delegation, how does that play into this, or does it not? Like, does it change the makeup of that delegation? Would Kathy Forbes, for example, be involved in that, or no?
So
as if you're thinking about like the Baltimore City delegation as an example.
Yeah, so if she were to be reelected, she's in the county part of 43, so she wouldn't be in the Baltimore City delegation meetings. But what does change is, so if right now 43 is represented on the Senate side by Senator Washington, if she were reelected, she would be in both Baltimore City and Baltimore County delegation meetings because she represents both. And also a question about up to 2. I mean, technically, you don't have to vote for as many candidates that there are. That's kind of that's political play if you want. You don't have to. And also to Mike, no. So if you are in a district that has 3 members, in both the primary if there are 3 people from that party running in that primary, you vote for 3, and then for the general, whomever the 3 people are, you can vote for any. There are lots of different people. There can be up to 6, I guess. 6 Dems, 6 Republicans. You can choose 3. That's always been the case.
I don't have any other questions on my end, and we will give folks a couple more seconds. If you have a question, please type it in the chat. Personally, between Joanne and Sarah, I feel very knowledgeable now about redistricting, both the process and some of our most complicated districts. Okay. All right, are we good to move on then? All right, then I think that we will we'll turn it over to Anita. And again, all of the links that have been discussed and the maps, we'll make sure that they're all in follow-up email. So you'll have that in your inbox as soon as the recording is ready as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So my name is Anita Lampel, and I use the She series. I live in Bethesda in District 16, which has been untouched by all of this. I am a volunteer leader with Jews United for Justice. Now that we're all caught up on the new state legislative districts, we want to take a moment to highlight some of the key dates and the information about the upcoming elections. Now, June 28th is the deadline for advanced voter registration and change of party affiliation. July 7 through July 14 are the new primary early voting dates, and you may vote from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and you may also register in person during this time. July 12th is the deadline to request a mail-in ballot by mail or fax, and anyone can do this. You don't need to have a reason to request a mail-in ballot. July 15th is the deadline to download a mail-in ballot from the state website. July 19th is the deadline to request a mail-in ballot in person at a local board. July 19th is the new primary election date, and that is from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. That you may engage in same-day voter registration at your assigned polling place. Just be sure to bring the proper documentation with you that proves where you live. Now, if you aren't sure where your assigned voting location is, we're going to put a link in the chat for you to look that up, and we'll also be sharing all of these links with you in a follow-up email, so don't worry if you can't look this up during tonight's program. If you need to check where your assigned in-person polling place is or any of your other voter information, you can do that at the link that's being posted in the chat right now. Before voting, you can find a sample ballot to review and see what you'll be asked to vote for and who you'll be asked to vote for. Those sample ballots can be found again at the link that's being shared with you. Again, we're going to share all of these links in a follow-up email. JUFJ has also gathered many of these resources in one place on our website, and we'll share that link in the chat with you as well. This is the JUFJ election information page. I'm now going to turn it over to Ioana Stokia to share a few exciting and related upcoming events from JUFJ, the BJC, and the JCRC of Howard County. And for those of you who can't follow those acronyms, Jews United for Justice, and the Jewish Community Relations Council, and the Baltimore Jewish Council. So, Ioana?
Thank you, Anita. Hi, everybody. My name is Ioana. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Laurel in District 21, and I'm a volunteer leader with Jews United for Justice. I would like to highlight a couple of upcoming events that might be of interest to folks on tonight's call. First, on June 28th, JUFJ is hosting a nonpartisan conversation on what's at stake in the Montgomery County primary elections. We are going to walk through which elected officials or offices are on the ballot, who is running, and why these offices matter. I highly recommend that event. I just attended one about a month ago. On June 30th, JUFJ and BJC are co-hosting a candidate carnival for several Baltimore area state districts, including 11, 40, 41, 43, and 46. And I am going to put that link in the chat right now. I think somebody has already done it, so thank you so much for that. So the link to the candidate carnival is in the chat. There's also a BJC candidate survey that will be released soon. And so the BJC sent out surveys to all the gubernatorial candidates, as well as candidates in District 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 41, 42, 43, and 46. On issues important to the Jewish community, and those results will be released in the upcoming weeks. So stay tuned for that information. Later this summer, JUFJ will also be doing in-person outdoor meetups in districts across the state as a way for people to connect with neighbors and get more involved in advocacy at the local and state levels. So keep an eye out for the invitation for those gatherings very soon. And then if you are interested in learning more or attending any one of these events, please fill out our feedback and commitment card. This is both how we get you the information you want for these upcoming events and how we can gather your feedback on tonight's program. We are going to put a link in that for that form in the chat right now, and give you a couple of minutes to fill it out before Matan closes us out for the evening. So the link, let me see if it's in the chat yet. If not, I will put it in there. Yeah, so the everyaction.com link, if you click on that right now, will be the link to the feedback and commitment card. So if you wouldn't mind clicking on that right now and taking a minute or two to fill it out, we would highly appreciate it. And then after that, Matan is gonna take over again. So thank you to everybody who is filling out the card.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll give another minute. While you do that, I just want to highlight, I saw a couple questions about some ballot initiatives, which is a great point. There are plenty across the state that are going to be critical and important to pay attention to. But just want to note that those ballot initiatives will not appear on your ballot until the general election in November. So don't expect ballot initiatives on your primary ballots when you go to vote in July. And don't be surprised that they're not there. That's intentional. That doesn't happen until the general election. So we'll stay tuned. We'll probably do another event when we're closer to that, which will highlight a number of things, including ballot initiatives. So stay tuned for that. But just want to make that note because I know there's already a lot of good conversation happening around what's going to be expected on that general election ballot. Sarah, is there anything else to add to that point?
No, just a really big push for the candidates carnival. If you want to meet, if you live in those districts, especially those that have that are new to you or have people who are going to be new to you and new electeds eventually, definitely sign up. It's super informal. We had this 4 years ago. Every single district gets a different area at Baltimore Hebrew in their very large auditorium, and you get to ask the candidates any question. I would say we have about 85 to 90% of the candidates who are running opposed already have RSVP'd that they will be there. So it's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, and I just want to give a big shout out to Sarah and to the BJC. They're really doing the legwork to set up that event. And it's exciting because we haven't been able to do it in a little bit. So again, getting FaceTime with candidates is a rare thing in such a small setting. So bring your questions, bring your concerns. It'll be pretty informal and just a way for you to have the conversations you need to have to be an informed voter going into the upcoming primary. Right, we're doing great on time. I'm seeing that folks, it looks like, are filling out the commitment card and feedback form. Again, that's really great because we can send you the specific information as a follow-up to that. I will turn it over to Shoshana to close us out. And I'm also taking note of all the questions and comments in the chat. So if we need to, we'll follow up with folks via email if you've highlighted specific concerns or questions.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Shoshana. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an Avodah Corps member at Maryland Community Organizer with Jews United for Justice. I just want to, first of all, thank all of you for being here tonight. This couldn't have been possible without all of you for attending. And also want to thank everyone who spoke, Joanne, Sarah, Matan, Heidi, Awana, Anita, and Shauna. Thank you for speaking. And thank you to all of our partners who are here. Really, this event was a brainchild of a lot of different people at a lot of different organizations. And so thank you to everybody who is involved in planning it. Just a final reminder, if you have not already done so, please fill out that feedback and commitment card. It is super valuable information for all of us. And it helps us to know what people want more information about, what we can sign you up for so that you make sure that you have like the links to events and everything. So please take a moment to fill that out super quick if you haven't done so already. And just want to reiterate what we've said. We've shared a lot of information and a lot of links tonight. That all in the coming days will be sent to you via email along with this recording. So don't worry if you're looking for things and don't have all of the links that we've shared saved because there were many of them. And if you have any questions, feel free to continue to put them in the chat or feel free to send a message to Matan or Sarah or I directly. We're happy to get back to you with that information. And thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night.